Welcome back to ALS Matters. This is episode 15. And as we go into Caregivers Month, we were having conversations on our last podcast with Tim, military veteran, and his wife was also a military veteran, but also a caregiver. So we thought we'd string a couple episodes together here. Marie, thank you for joining us today. Could you give us a little background of kind of your role as an ALS caregiver and kind of what that entails for you guys?
Tim is at the point where he can't do much of anything. So somebody always has to be at his side, feeding him, bathing him, helping him go to the bathroom, whatever, dressing him, everything that's needed. So pretty much anything that goes, I have to provide it, or an aide has to provide it.
So when we were talking with Tim, he's diagnosed about 10 years ago. For you, what's that journey been like, having to kind of see this and go through this with him?
Been heart-wrenching at times. He was such an active person before, and he's just he as this disease progresses, he loses a piece of himself. It might be he might lose something in a month, he might lose something in a week. It just, there's no rhyme or reason to anything. And I'm a very organized person, for lack of a better word, I guess. And I like to be able to plan things in advance. So it's very difficult to be able to do that from one week to the next, not knowing where his bottom line is at that point.
I can definitely understand that. I've noticed over the last 18, 20 months of doing the Qalsody treatments, like just having to schedule around those because you have to do them every 28 days. Like, I'm still mobile and things like that, but it's like you said, every few months there's something else you got to deal with. And it makes it definitely makes it hard to plan for things. We mentioned briefly that you were also in the military. Would you give us a little military history for Marie?
Sure. I was in the Navy and the Navy Reserves for 31 years. I started in the active duty Navy, and that was a 4-year commitment. And from there, I joined the reserves after a break of a year. And I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy. And what that is sort of like a medic, LPN kind of stuff. I was trained as a pharmacy technician, so most of my time was spent in a pharmacy.
Has that helped at all with your husband's diagnosis and what you've had to go through, having that as a background?
Yeah, actually, it really has. And the fact that as a civilian, I've always worked in hospitals or home care companies or whatever. It's been a big help. Because I can anticipate things when, there's a certain lingo that goes with the medical world that, I can interpret maybe a little easier than somebody else. So yes, it's been very helpful.
I believe we asked your husband this question as well, but I want to ask you too, what was being a part of the armed forces? Like, what does that mean to you personally? What did you get out of that experience?
I'm very proud of it. At the time when I went in, women didn't have a lot of jobs that they could choose from.
Right.
And it's gotten so much better now than it was in the past. It's a way to give, I feel it's a way to give back to our country, a way to give back to our neighbors and friends, relatives, protecting them, looking out for them on a greater scale.
Are there any lessons or values from your time that have kind of helped you deal with being an ALS caregiver?
Oh yeah. I think just the stick-to-itiveness that you learn that you can do it, whether you think you can do it or not, you'll get through it somehow. You'll be able to reach that goal, even if it takes you longer to figure things out. You'll still obtain that goal.
Any other ones? Just curious.
Um, no, not so much. Other than just the fact that anything is possible. Really, you can
Right.
do.
So for a lot of caregivers, they often don't feel like they receive enough support. Who's been somebody that's one of your biggest sources of support, and how have they supported you through this?
I have a network of friends that help me a great deal, that live in our neighborhood, or that we've been friends with when we lived in North Carolina previously. And my sister Nancy and her husband Matt, they moved down here about 3 years ago, so that they have gone above and beyond with anything that's needed. Tim organizes a walk and a golf tournament every year, and they have been nothing but outstanding with the efforts they put forth for that.
That's awesome. It's definitely something. I have a cousin that was diagnosed shortly after I was, and having somebody to walk that path with has been very beneficial for me. So I can imagine, especially being someone that I was so close with when I was younger.
Mhm.
So I can imagine having a sister, or anyone that's close to you helping out would be huge. What would be what would be something that you want other caregivers or loved ones that have an ALS patient in their family? What would be something you'd want them to know about supporting someone with ALS?
Um, don't ask, what do you need help with? Because they're going to say 9 times out of 10, they're going to say nothing. I've got it covered.
Yeah,
Then it may be true and it may not be true. Think of things that you can do. Maybe make a meal once a month or something, and just drop it off and say, "I was thinking of you," or something like that. Do you need help pulling weeds in your yard? Anything at all. Just come over and do something.
yeah,
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to. We all know what this disease leads to is death. We've already gone through that process of thinking about it and rethinking about it. So anything you say is not gonna hurt our feelings. If you see
right.
something that's weird, ask us a question. It's important that more people know about this disease.
Yeah, it's kind of what led me into doing this with the ALS Association, and I believe we touched on it briefly with your husband as well. But just sometimes you just have to do it. Like, don't ask, just do it, and everybody will be in much happier around it than having to try to have the conversation.
Right,
I've also noticed that a lot of ALS patients have developed a very thick skin. Um, and like you said, just ask a question. It's most of the folks that I've interacted with over the last couple of years are always very open to talk about their situation, and kind of tips and tricks and things that they've done, or devices they've used that they liked or didn't like, right?
right,
Um, I definitely think, talking with folks about their situations, how you're going to understand it, right? If you never ask a question, or just, maybe just keep your thoughts to yourself, it doesn't further the conversation any. Does that make sense?
right.
What's a piece of advice you would give other caregivers who are looking to help out their loved ones with ALS?
I have two. The first one would be proactive. This disease changes from month to month, from week to week, from year to year. Have that piece of equipment that you're going to need in your house waiting to be used, because you don't want to not have it when you need it and then have to have it be ordered and wait for it to come. Because
Right.
by not having the proper equipment, um, it's limiting what your loved one might be able to do.
And what's the
And
second?
and the second piece is take some time for yourself. that's the hardest thing to do, because you don't trust anybody quite as much as you trust yourself with them.
Yeah.
But you get burnt out. I mean, it happens. We're fortunate enough that twice a year I go away for 3 nights in a row, so I can catch up on my sleep and do nothing if I don't want to do anything, and just get back to a positive frame of mind.
Yeah.
It's a
I
lot of
definitely think
stress.
that's important. It is. It definitely is. So outside of your twice yearly trips, what's the next biggest thing you use to kind of help level set yourself?
Um, I have a couple good friends that I can yell and scream, and and they know that I love Tim with all my heart, and that this is hard for me, it's hard for him, it's hard for everybody involved. But so they know that half the stuff I'm going to tell them, is just
It's
over
venting, not
yeah, I'm
necessarily. Yeah.
just, yeah, it has nothing to do with the fact if I love him or not. I just need to
Right.
vent.
Yeah.
And they
And I
know that.
imagine that if he's anything like me, there was a lot of time that I spent like, no, I can still do this thing, so I'm going to as long as I can, right?
Oh
And
gosh, yeah.
as I've noticed, I'm losing ability to do things. There's a frustration level that I have that just starts to build up. So I'm sure that can become difficult, right? If I'm already
Right.
frustrated and my wife tries to step in and help, it's just gonna frustrate me even more.
Oh yeah, we go through that.
Yeah.
Usually at night when we're both tired.
Yes, I've definitely noticed that later in the evenings, I'm much more prone to get aggravated or frustrated by something. Um, what's the best piece of advice that you've gotten as a caregiver?
Um, that's a hard one. I mean, I think probably the VA allows me to go away to reset my clock, so to speak. I think that's the biggest. That you have to look after yourself so that you can take care of your loved one.
Yeah.
Because if you're not at 100%, you're not going to be much help to them.
Best way to take care of them is take care of yourself.
So we mentioned the VA just now. I'm curious from your side of it, watching your husband go through this early stages. What was some of your takeaways from the VA experience? And I'll ask the same question as it relates to the ALS clinic you guys go to now. What's some of the things you think they did well, maybe could have improved on early on? Something that other, military veterans going through this could be on the lookout for.
I think that a lot of veterans don't affiliate with the VA to begin with. And it's important to know that ALS is an automatic 100% disability. And there's all kinds of equipment that the VA will provide you because of that. There's money that they will give you for changing, things that need to be redone in your house so that you can get along better. There's there Everybody there is has dealt with so many patients, and every patient is different with ALS, every single one, and so they've seen thousands of people coming through there. You need to affiliate with the VA, even if you've never done it before. You need to show up with your diagnosis in hand from your civilian neurologist and tell them, get signed up, get assigned to a clinic, and move forward, because they're there to help you.
What about your local clinic? What kind of I'm trying to paint a picture of both scenarios, right? So what do you see that your clinic now maybe does better or even doesn't do as good of a job that the VA did or
The
does?
civilian clinic, you're saying?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, well,
Kinda comparing the 2.
yeah, with the civilian clinic, you're going to be using your insurance, and some things aren't covered by insurance, and some things need prior approval for insurance. I mean, they're out there to make money.
Yeah.
You know, and where the VA is more about the patient, I think. You know, they give you things. They may not have the great knowledge that some of these research facilities have when it comes to ALS, but they're willing to work with your other doctors. They're willing to do whatever they can to make your life easier.
What's been the biggest help from the VA since your husband's diagnosis?
Biggest help, well, we have couples counseling that we have been doing for quite a while now, several years. And I think that's really helped. Because, you know, you're both going through this, you're both seeing this from different viewpoints. And the counseling helps you meet on some common grounds with some of the issues you might be having.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. What would be what's the thing that brings you joy or peace now outside of kind of your yearly trips you were talking about? You know, when you have a really difficult day, how do you reignite the joy and peace?
Um, since I was very, very little, reading has always been my escape. I read a lot. I always have a book with me no matter where I go. So I can just escape into that other world in the book. And when
Kind
I
of turn your
get
mind off
inside,
a little bit for the
exactly.
time. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Any final thoughts, Mary? Or Marie, sorry.
That's okay. Um, no, I think that that we need to remember that the ALS, the person with ALS is going through a tremendous amount of stress and strain, but that ALS patient needs to remember that their primary caregiver is going through that same stress. And a lot of times we don't express it because we know the patient is going through more than we can even imagine.
Do you think that's from a fear of adding on to that, to the
Yeah,
patient's level of
I
stress?
think so. I think so.
Yeah.
That they have enough on their mind without listening to you, and that's why it's good to have a sounding board outside outside of the house that
Yeah.
someone you can talk to.
Yeah. I would definitely agree. Well, Marie, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you and your husband sitting down with us, talking through your journey in ALS. And for anyone watching, if you know anyone that's been diagnosed or starting to have issues and think it may be ALS, highly recommend reaching out to any of these organizations that we've talked about before in the last podcast or this one. And thank you guys for your time. Like, share, subscribe, do all the podcast things. And we'll see you next time. Thank y'all.
Thank you.